let's talk about body fluid regulation and the excretory system. The breakdown of various molecules used for food and energy, like amino acids that are found in proteins, result in nitrogenous waste products, so waste that have nitrogen in them. And if those build up in your body, that can actually cause problems, or that can lead to basically poisoning your body. So most animals have developed tubular excretory organs that will regulate the excretion of these metabolic wastes back into the environment, and they also control the water-salt balance of the body and of the blood. The urinary system in humans contains the kidneys as the primary organ for excretion, and they are one of the chief organs of homeostasis in the human body because they're the ultimate regulators of blood composition. The kidneys produce urine by filtering the blood and concentrating the waste products to get them out of your body. The human kidneys are bean-shaped, reddish-brown organs, and they're each about the size of your fist, similar in size actually to the heart. We kind of compared the human heart to the size of a fist. The kidneys are a little bit smaller than that. They are located on either side of the vertebral column, just below the diaphragm in the lower back, and they're partially protected by the lower rib cage in that location. The kidney can be divided into three major parts if it's cut in a longitudinal cross-section. The renal cortex is the outer region of the kidney. The renal medulla is the inner region, just below the cortex, and it kind of has a fan shape to it, a pyramidal shape. And then the renal pelvis is the innermost part of the kidney, and it's actually a hollow chamber. In this picture, that blue arrow is pointing to the renal pelvis, but this is where urine is going to collect. Each kidney is connected to a ureter. The renal pelvis actually dumps into the ureter, and the ureter takes the urine to the urinary bladder where it is stored, and then urine is voided through the urethra from the bladder to the outside world. Microscopically, each kidney is made up of over 1 million tiny tubules that are called nephrons. So the functional unit of the kidney is the nephron. The nephrons are what make urine. Most of the nephrons are located in both the cortex and the medulla, so they kind of cross through both of those sections. And the nephrons are made up of several parts. The glomerulus is a capillary bed that supplies blood to the kidneys to be filtered. So that's kind of the first step of the urine formation, is that blood supply getting to the nephron. And then as the blood exits the glomerulus, it enters this tubular system by way of a capsule that surrounds the glomerulus and kind of captures that fluid as it comes out, and then it goes into the tubules and works its way through. The tubule system is where the kidneys will save the nutrients and get rid of the wastes, and then eventually the tubules empty into the collecting tubule, which then dumps urine into the renal pelvis. The average human produces between 1 to 2 liters of urine a day, and urine production requires 3 distinct processes: filtration, reabsorption, and secretion. The filtration is going to take place at the glomerulus, the reabsorption takes place in the tubules, and then the secretion also takes place in the tubules. When blood enters the glomerulus, remember that's just a capillary bed, the blood pressure is going to cause small molecules like water, nutrients, salts, and wastes to move from the glomerulus on the inside, from the capillary, to push that out into the capsule, the tissue that's surrounding that capillary bed. The plasma proteins and your blood cells in general are too big to cross a healthy glomerulus, so they'll remain in the blood as it kind of flows away. Now, if you've got kidney disease or kidney damage, sometimes those proteins and those blood cells will leak into the Bowman's capsule and into the tubule system, and you'll see that in the urine. So typically blood in the urine is an indicator of either a kidney problem, because the blood could be coming from the kidneys, or a bladder problem. The blood is coming from the bladder itself. Tubular reabsorption takes place when substances move across the walls of the tubules back into the bloodstream, so back into the associated capillary network that's around the tubules. So reabsorption, the purpose of that is to try to save things that your body doesn't want to lose in the urine. So you're reabsorbing it back into the bloodstream. Sodium ions are actively pumped through this process back into the capillary network. Chloride ions tend to follow sodium, and so sodium and chloride basically make salt. So once the salt has gotten back into the capillary bed, a lot of the water will also kind of follow that through osmosis. About 60 to 70% of salt and water are reabsorbed at that first part of the tubule system. Nutrients like glucose and amino acids will also return to the blood at the same location, at the proximal convoluted tubule. Now, this is a selective process to get glucose back into the bloodstream because it requires a carrier protein to actively transport the glucose across the plasma membrane, so across the membrane inside the tubule back into the capillary. And this is the reason that unregulated diabetics will have extra sugar in their urine, because they've got all this glucose that's in their blood, and there's only so much that can be done with the pumps to pump it from the tubule back into the bloodstream. So a lot of it kind of filters through at that first part of urinary formation. At the filtration part, they lose all that glucose into the tubule system, and then only so much of it can be saved back into the bloodstream. So a lot of that kind of spills over into the urine. Secretion is the third step, and in secretion, the waste substances like uric acid, hydrogen ions, ammonia, creatinine, histamine, and even some drugs like penicillin are actually pumped back into the tubular system from the blood. So in reabsorption, things are going from the tubules back into the blood. In secretion, they're going from the blood into the tubules, and they're basically doing that to eliminate that from the body. The kidneys help maintain homeostasis in 4 ways. The first way is what we just talked about, so how they excrete metabolic wastes into the urine. The second way is that they maintain the water-salt balance by reabsorption of water and passive diffusion of salt and active transport of salt out of one section of the nephron called the loop of Henle and back into the blood. And they do this as needed to maintain a correct balance in the blood. And this is regulated by a hormone, anti-diuretic hormone, ADH, that we will talk about in the endocrine system, which is coming up next. The third way that the kidneys maintain homeostasis is they help maintain the acid-base balance by reabsorbing bicarbonate ions and then excreting hydrogen ions as needed, as necessary, to maintain the normal pH of the blood. And then the last way, the fourth way, is that the kidneys do secrete a hormone such as erythropoietin, which will stimulate the bone marrow to make more red blood cells. They also make renin, which is a hormone that's involved in the reabsorption of salt. So if the kidneys are not working correctly, kind of at the end stages of kidney failure, you actually can become anemic because the kidneys are not making enough erythropoietin, and if they're not making enough erythropoietin, then the marrow is not making enough red blood cells, so you become anemic kind of in the end stages of kidney failure.